There, this is Jennifer from Billings Public Library, and I'm bringing to you today another helpful technique to enhance your knitting. And today we are going to attempt the Kitchener stitch. This comes up a lot in my knitting group, and it's a challenge for me, and I do have to use a reference every time I try to use it. And for that I use Ann Budd's Getting Started Knitting Socks, and I know I've talked about it before. The library owns a copy of this book. I own my own copy because I refer to it all the time. And I also have a digital copy. That way I can take it with me when I travel. It's easier to transport. And I've always wondered why it was called the Kitchener stitch. The library has a couple knitting books about knitting during World War I, World War II. And it's called the Kitchener stitch because it was named after one of I think a British officer, Lord Kitchener. He had his own sock design, and I think he provided to women in order to knit for soldiers at that time. And then of course that just sort of translated into the Kitchener stitch based on the design that he came up with. So there's an interesting little tidbit for you. In order to accomplish the Kitchener stitch, you need to have the same amount of stitches on both needles. And of course, I'm finishing my sock, which is what I'm using the Kitchener stitch for. It could also be used to seam the the shoulders if you're knitting a bottom-up sweater. But I use it mostly for socks. So what you need to do is you need to have the same amount of stitches on the needles that you're trying to seam together, and I do. I've got 8 on each. And then you're going to cut a long tail enough to weave through those stitches. And I have my trusty tapestry needle here. And I'll try to keep this as simple as possible. But what you're going to do is you're going to thread your yarn through the first stitch on the front needle as if to purl, and leave the stitch on the needle. Then you're going to thread the needle through the first stitch on the back needle as if to knit. There we go. And you're going to leave that stitch on the needle as well. Now we're going to come back up through the front to the first stitch, and we're going to thread it through the first stitch as if to knit. Now we're going to drop that stitch off the front needle. Boop, there it goes. Okay, and now we're going to go to the back, and we're going to go through that stitch as if to purl. Okay? And we're going to slip that stitch off the back needle. All right, and then we're going to stay at the back needle, and we're going to go through the next back stitch as though we're going to knit. So that's kind of a 4-step thing, and from now on we're going to repeat just steps 3 and 4. Oh, we're supposed to leave that stitch on the needle. Okay, so now we're going to come to the front again, and we're going to go through as if to knit. Then we're going to slip that stitch off the needle. Then we're going to go through the next front stitch as if to purl, and that stitch is going to stay on the needle. Now we're going to move to the back again, and we're going to go through the first stitch as if to purl, and that one slips off the needle. And then we stay at the back, and we're going to go through the back stitch as if to knit, and that stitch stays on the needle. Okay, we're coming to the front again as if to knit. That stitch slips off. The next front stitch, purl. That stitch stays on the needle. We're going to head to the back, go through the back stitch as if to purl, slip that one off the needle, And you're just going to continue in this manner. And as you can see, it makes a nice finish to your socks. All right, so there's a lot of different ways that the Kitchener stitch can be accomplished. I find Ann Budd's version by far the easiest, so I recommend it to you. And if you have any troubles, you can always drop in at the knitting circle that meets at the library. We're meeting online right now through Zoom. And otherwise, keep watching our YouTube videos, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.